remember back in part 1 that along with the vehicle came boxes of spare parts. Labels were few and far between, and what went where was a bit of a mystery. At least for the back end, it's time we do a little bit of an inventory to find out what we have, and just as importantly, what we don't have. Laid out before us is what we've got, and we'll start off with these, I suppose you call them U-bolts. We have 4 of them, brand new. That's enough. Then, I believe that could be a hub seal. We've got what I would call securing washers. There's, I think, 4 good solid ones like this, and then there's 4 slightly less solid ones that you bend over to lock the hub nuts in place. Then we got these shackle things. We've only got 3 of them. We need 4. These are all threaded, and so what my problem is the original ones are a different size. They're a little shorter than these ones here, so that's not going to cut it. I've ordered 4 new ones, and if they are threaded, and for 2 of them the bolt has to slide all the way through, in which case I can just drill out bigger holes. But as long as they're all the same size, that's okay. We're not going to need any more spring bushes for the back because we've installed those in the springs already, and the spring hangers that we welded onto the frame came with bushes. So we've got more than enough even for the front. Then we have bearings. We have 1 large bearing for one of the hubs. Then in this packet here, I believe, is also a hub bearing. That might need a little wash up and a re-grease. And we have 2 Timken bearings, smaller ones for the hub. Then we have packets of Shackle Bolts. So I think we've got enough for both front and back. A few mystery oil seals, and they are labelled oil seal. This one looks like it might be from the gearbox. There's a sinister looking little bolt in there that I don't like the look of, but I have seen before. And in amongst this is also some roasted garlic mashed potatoes, because you never know when you might need a little snack. Well, welcome to the mudroom. This is where the cats get fed. This is where people probably take off their muddy shoes before entering the house, and it's also my office. A multifunctional space, and quite fitting for a man such as myself. This is also where all the magic happens in the Foreman and Wilms post-production of our movies. On this old computer here that we bought back in about 2012, and that would make it around 7 years old or so. My maths are not the best. You'll see that nothing much happens on this screen here, and that was an unfortunate incident that involved a cat, a coffee cup, and a computer. And I'm sure you can work out the rest of that terrible tale yourself. Anyway, got it hooked up to a monitor, and we've got a keyboard and mouse, so everything is functioning. It's a little slow, but we've done all the films, all the way from probably the Canning Stock Route, I think, was about the first one we did on this computer. The whole Western Walkabout series, Shark Bay, Mojave Road, Allagash Wilderness Waterways, and also the beginning of the Series 1 Land Rover restoration videos. We are going to upgrade soon to a big powerful workstation, obviously. This one here is starting to not be able to cut it too much. Well, why are we in the mudroom? And the reason for that is we need to find out about parts. Because if you're a fella like myself, it's a little daunting getting on the internet and trying to find where you can find these parts and who you can trust. And so I've compiled a rather small list, but it should be able to help get those rookie restorers up and running in the right direction. So let us begin. Well, as a quick side note, we're going to briefly discuss the differences in between a Series 1, 2 and 3. The very basics, of course. It gets very complex. In fact, people have written entire books on the subject. We're not going to go that in depth. So if we have a look at this photograph of our Land Rover, a Series 1, first thing you'll notice, those headlights are back in the grille. Now this no doubt reduces their efficiency but protects them from getting smashed by the bush. Then, as we look at this Series 2, you'll notice also that those headlights are set back in the grille. But have a look at the doors. Nice and curved, very flash. And if we click back onto our one, flat, straight up and down. Okay, so there's some telling features between a Series 1 and a Series 2. Now as we have a look at a Series 3, see that they've moved the headlights out to the wings. And that no doubt increases their efficiency, and they're a little more vulnerable to the bush, but most of the bush is probably smashed down by those years. And then we move on to the next one, the Mighty Defender. And this, of course, is our Australian one, which is dying a slow death back home under a tree. All right, getting into this, John Craddock. He's my go-to website for Series 1 Land Rover parts, and he has quite an extensive selection. What you'll find is that you'll get together your order, do the transaction, and then a few days later there'll be a separate transaction for the shipping, which is a bit of a pain in the backside, but the service is good, it's been trustworthy, and like I said, there's a lot of parts, so you can really get into rebuilding stuff. And he's even got a little bit of information on the parts you're getting, because one of the issues that I find is that even within the series Land Rover, there can be evolutions, and parts that are applicable for 1 year might not be so much for another. So that can be a little bit problematic. You don't want to order stuff all the way from the UK only to find out that it's wrong. Well, the second website that we're going to have a look at is Rimmer Brothers, and they have a rather sparse selection of Series 1 parts. Their service, however, is very good also, and you get what you order. Prices are quite reasonable. And another thing about Rimmer Brothers, if we have a look here, is look at that, engine rebuild kits. And this is not for a Series Land Rover, but remember that I have that 3.5 litre V8 in mine, and so they have quite a selection of engine rebuild kits for V8s. If that's the way I have to go, then that's available, and we'll see. Also with that engine, if you remember that the intake manifold looked like it was badly rotted, and they don't make those anymore, so I might have to upgrade to a different carburetor system and a different intake manifold, which could be a little bit costly. Anyway, Rimmer Brothers get the thumbs up also. If we move on now to Bearmark, I haven't actually used them, but they have quite a selection of little bits and pieces, odds and ends, seals and bearings, fuses and engine mounts and dust covers and all that sort of stuff that you'll find that'll fit your Series 1 Land Rover. So, like I said, haven't used them, but they do appear to be okay. Now, Dunsfold Land Rover, the previous owner, highly recommended these guys. Their website is not very good. I think they're quite old school, so you're better off ringing them. And I have. I was after 10-inch brake drums, and they said the cost for shipping those from the UK would be quite prohibitive. So they recommended an American company, which we'll get to directly. So for their honesty, and I do believe also that they have a rather extensive selection of parts and accessories and bits and pieces, give them a shout out as well. Now we move on to Island 4x4, another website that I haven't used, but they've also got quite a selection of parts for Series 1 Land Rovers, and the others of course. But have a look at this rear end, the Crossmember with these extensions on them, which could have been quite an attractive option for the business that we had to deal with in episodes 4 and 5 with fitting that whole back end on from the rust damage. So I haven't tried Island 4x4, I don't know how good they are, but there they are as an option for anyone out there who is looking for parts and prices. Now we move on to that American company that we spoke of, and that is Rovers North. And I think pretty much it'd be fair to say that anything you buy from them is going to be up to half again as much more expensive than you might get from the UK. However, they are here in the US. A lot of their stuff is genuine and so pricey yet still, and they have nothing for Series 1 Land Rovers, only for 2 and 3. However, some of the stuff does transfer over, like these 10-inch brake drums, which I got from these guys. And also, if you have a look here, that rather familiar, if you've been watching or following these episodes, stub axle. And there's a tragic story to be told about that for a later episode as well. Keep it in mind. Now, if we have a look down here, we see that same rear crossmember with 18-inch extensions already on, with those little platforms that the tub sits on, if you remember. And that's why we didn't want to cut them off for the 3-piece section that we got from John Craddock, because of course that would have been a disaster. So I called Rovers North about this, thinking that that would be the option that I want. And this is for a Series 2 and Series 3. I couldn't see why it wouldn't work for a Series 1. And they told me, and he wasn't sure, and I can't verify if he was wrong or right, he felt that the width of the chassis on a Series 2 was wider than that of a Series 1, which would have made this option quite problematic. So in the end, we went with Craddock's 3-piece, 2 boots and a crossmember. Anyway, that's something for research later on. So that's my very short list of Land Rover websites, and I'm sure if you're good at searching for parts yourself, you'd be able to do this, no worries. But if you're a little bit of a retard like myself, it helps to have that little kickstart in the right direction for the rookie restorer. Okay, I think I see a donkey train coming up the road with parts from the UK, so we're going to go back to the workshop and see what we've got. All right, this is very exciting. This is what you'd call an unboxing. That's all the rage nowadays. All right, what do we have in here? Gaskets, I finally found them. They're the ones that go between the stub axle and the axle housing itself. I kept getting the wrong ones. We have shock absorbers, brand new, front and back. Oh, stick them down there out of the way. Things are getting cluttered. Funny that. We've got paperwork. And then we have driving flange for the differentials. Let's have a look at them. That's them. I hope they're the right ones. Nice and greasy. Alright, we've got a lot of piles of that snow shit. Then, oh, okay, we've got some more U-bolts. Make sure we've got the right sizes. And shackle pins. Shackle plates, front and back. Now, this was my issue. I got 4 of these, and these ones came in the spare parts box, and these ones have got the threads on them. So on one side there are no threads, on the other side there are, and they're different. So essentially these ones here are pointless. They just came with the truck and they're as good as garbage. So these ones correspond with the originals, and I couldn't find the threaded ones on the website. I'm sure they were there, but I didn't get them. So I'm going to have to try and resurrect the 2 that I have already. So you can see here, this one's got a thread still in it, and I think I'll be able to get that out without too much trouble. That was because everything was fused in and rusted, but I'm sure I can resurrect that one. And this is how it works. So you've got your shackle pin, and that just passes through this one, like such, and then it screws in there. And then once it's all the way through, you've got a bolt on the end. I just have to interrupt myself for a second. Sorry, Mr. Foreman. Look, I'm about as purebred West Australian as a white man can be. Now, since colonisation, the Australian language has devolved somewhat from the mother tongue, nowadays to be what you would say its own dialect. Now, the remoteness of West Australia has somewhat compounded this effect, and in addition to words such as crikey and struth, you're going to hear guarda, weeros, bungara. You know what I'm talking about, and I could. Also has to be said that a recent mining boom in West Australia has brought over a lot of exotics from as far afield as Victoria, Queensland and New South Wales, and even strange foreign folk called New Zealanders. This has no doubt caused some cultural dilution, probably for the better. Now for myself, speaking a dialect of a dialect, I also have a few isms, one of which has to be clarified right now. This is a bolt, and this is a nut. But in my language, it can also be called a bolt. Now, why do I do that after repeated attempts to correct myself? I think I answered that question back in the mudroom. But if you're a little bit of a retard like myself, carry on. Through you've got a bolt on the end. So I'm going to resurrect the threaded ones and just renew the other ones that I got, although I'm sure that one there, that's why I'm replacing them. That one there's gone because it's all fused in. I just can't separate them. And there you go. They're my spare parts. I'm thinking I might have enough to go ahead and rebuild all that back end. Springs, hubs, seals, etc, etc. Well, before we get too excited about putting anything back together, we may as well investigate the health of the rear differential. Now, this may come as a surprise to you all, but I don't know much about differentials. But I think by the next episode, that might change. I'll see you then for episode 7.